This is the Data Privacy Detective. Well, I'm recording this on April 15th, tax day in the United States. And we're going to talk today about Estonia and its digital identity system. And this has a lot to do with what we share with government and how we do it, and how there might be a better way than what we do in the United States to protect our personal information, but still give a digital identity to people who need it, whether that's government or the private sector or even friends. For about 20 years, Estonia, country of 1.3 million people, has pioneered a digital ID system for its residents. Every Estonian gets a digital identity at birth. The EID, that's what we're going to call it, isn't held private like a U.S. Social Security number, but it's like a kind of a public key about us, with personal information about us then held separately and securely by a government or a bank or any of the other people who we need to provide our special personal information to live life the way it is today. Well, all Estonians, no matter where they happen to live, get they have, over 99% of the population has a state-issued digital identity. Now, this is, to get a little further into it, a digital or electronic identity system. So we're calling it an EID. And it's the cornerstone of Estonia's E-state. Estonia has made an effort and proven it's good at it to develop digital technology the way few other countries have. And it's a smaller country. EID and the ecosystem around it is part of any Estonian citizen's daily transactions in both the public and private sector. And Estonians use their EIDs to vote online, to pay bills, to sign contracts, to get their health information and to share it, to shop for goods and pay for them, much more. Estonians can use their e-identity through a state-issued identity, an ID card. They can use a mobile ID on their smartphones. And they can use, if they wish, the application's Smart ID app. Holders of a digital identity don't have to be Estonian residents anymore. For 10 years now, we're recording this in 2024, Estonia has offered the opportunity to non-Estonians to be e-residents of Estonian and thereby obtain a digital ID and have access to a range of digital services that are quite diverse, regardless of their citizenship or where they live. Well, let's take an example about this. Let's take the situation of police checking a driver's license. Well, an Estonian driver no longer has to carry a driver's license because a police officer in Estonia can, via X road, we'll come back to the X road, make an inquiry from the database of the road administration whether that person has a valid license. No reason to look at 10 or at night or at midnight whether a driver's license seems to match up with the person sitting in the car. The driver needs to present his or her personal identification document, and then the police can check it directly and will know if it's a valid license. Now, X Road, which we mentioned, is a digital plan. It's been implemented in a number of places, including Finland, which has a great sharing arrangement now with Estonia. But it's in use in places as diverse as Azerbaijan or Namibia. And what X Road does is to allow data to be automatically exchanged between countries in many different interoperable ways. There's an automatic data exchange capability that's been established, for example, between Estonia and Finland in different places. Now, this is a decentralized type of architecture. There isn't any one single point of failure. It's independent of issues like platform and architecture of business or other users. X-Road enables the information systems of X-Road members on any software platform. There's unilateralism about it. X-Road members can ask for access to any data services provided through X-Road, such as digital or EIDs in Estonia. It's available for standardization and for managing and developing. International standards and protocols are used where possible. And how about the security? Well, exchanging data through X-Road does not affect the integrity, the availability, or the confidentiality of information kept within. So it's a very interesting experiment that is far more than that now in Estonia. It's in wide use. And you have to think about the Estonian digital ID system as unique in its very complicated legal framework that's been tweaked and adjusted over the years, and the fact that Estonian residents rely on it. There has been very little backlash or upset in relation to it. There was in 2017 when there was a data breach, which was then fixed, and data confidence has been regained. You have to think of digital governance as part of overall governance and identity. And this approach focuses more on very specific applications you'll find within sectors rather than in legislation, such as GDPR or HIPAA in the United States. Now, it's a little more complicated than you get a number and you use it. Let's talk about it just a bit. There's a Population Register Act in Estonia, and that is the one that issues then a unique number to every Estonian resident, and that's called the Personal Identification Code, the PIC. And then there's an Identity Documents Act that governs the issue of the digital ID, the ED that incorporates this Personal Identification Code. The PIC goes to every individual at birth or any time after that on application to the processor of the population register, the PR. Now, this does not function independently as a digital ID, but when a resident applies for an EID, they submit information that's then checked against the population register, and then they get an EID that's made unique for them by including the PIC. So the digital ID is kind of a collection of all the parts issued under the Identity Documents Framework that I very briefly described, and the Population Register Framework. Now, the ID database that is held becomes a repository of ID-related personal data and documents. And the PR is a repository for other personal information about people. Now, it's important that the digital ID isn't just to access databases, but any other registered databases storing personal information, allowing access through the ID, including private databases. So that's how it can work with banking institutions and many other private shopping and so on. And that too goes through the X-Road system, which is an interface allowing databases to talk to one another, to share information, so that when data is really needed, actors can access the relevant needed information directly. Access is determined by data sharing agreements entered into between data collectors. And you see how that eliminates a system of requesting and releasing personal information the way it's done in most of the world. Well, we won't dig deeper for time reasons into this technology in this podcast. The system uses blockchain thinking, which is based on a very fundamental point that individuals and everyone else hold keys to their data boxes, our data repositories about ourselves, when we communicate and share. Think of an EID as a public key, but it's not one that'll open the door to the private information stored within. What it really does is to allow, through the public key, to get a verification or certainty about pieces of information. Take, for example, the need increasingly to know whether somebody really is 14 years old or 16 years old or 18 years old or whatever it may be, to access social media in places that think it's been abused too much and should require parental approval, or to places that want to control substances and make them not available to people under 18, or for voting rights, or for the list can go on. And the digital ID can confirm things about someone without revealing the underlying details about them, which of course has enormous privacy risk when we do it that way. And you see how a digital ID is not like a U.S. Social Security number, which then gives information that puts at risk retirement income and creates opportunities for fraud in the way it's used in the United States. On balance, how do we size this up? Is this good or bad for data privacy? Well, in the written piece that accompanies this podcast, you'll find two analyses, one by Privacy International. It's always worth a good look at what they have to say. And I would say Privacy International gives Estonia good marks as compared with what happens in other countries globally. Nothing's perfect. Privacy International is first to say that, but it's certainly better than what happens when things like Social Security numbers are used, or we are forced to provide all sorts of information just to prove one answer to one question. We'll end there. We'll come back to this. It's an interesting experiment, well beyond experimental status. As always, I'll close by reminding you, protecting your personal privacy and your data begins with you.